Apple released iPhone 11 in September 2019, and since that time there are 5 new models come out to this day, and if you think about it, you can do exactly what you do in one into other. I mean, look at the differences between models. They are not even hiding, but don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Apple has just been releasing the same phone with a different name since the iPhone 11. But aside from a key design tweaks and increase in storage capacity, what has really changed? Think about the differences between iPhone 3 and the iPhone 4. The screen resolution doubled and the iPhones got front-facing cameras for the first time with the iPhone 4. Now let's compare the iPhone 13 and 14. They both have the same processor. If you are a mobile game enthusiast, you might have noticed a slight performance boost to the iPhone 14 having an additional graphical core. But if you are not into gaming, what was it that made you switch from iPhone 13 to iPhone 14? Even though both phones are practically the same. Most likely it was the feeling that your iPhone, which you have only used for at most 3 years, is now feels outdated and its performance has declined. Now, some of you might point out that Apple has been intentionally using planned obsolescence and that our phones are being slowed down by software updates, and you are aware of this. You can say that the newly introduced features put a burden on the phones and that they slow down the old models. But what I want to say is, did we really need these features or did they make us feel like we needed them? For example, the latest gallery overhaul. I think it has become complicated and messy compared to its old self, but it's now more difficult to run on the application this way on older phones. But what I want to draw your attention to is the fact that this isn't just something Apple is doing anymore. Almost every brand you use now follows this practice. From coffee makers to sweaters, computers, and even washing machines. All of them break down, burn out, or malfunction sooner than we expect. I'm sure all of us have grandmothers or great-grandmothers whose 15 years old dishwashers or washing machines are still working without any problems. Meanwhile, our brand new high-tech machines start breaking down with issues after 2 or 3 years. In this video, we are going to take a closer look at how we, as customers, are contributing to these mountains of waste and whether there is a way to escape this cycle. So what you are seeing is the Centennial Light Bulb, the world's longest burning light bulb. It has been working continuously since the 1901 for 123 years, and it has barely ever turned off. It's kept running by the Livermore Fire Department in California. You can see this bulb on live stream using this link. The reason I am showing this to you is so you can compare it to the light bulbs in your own home that kept burning out. In fact, light bulbs used to last much longer. While you are replacing your latest, supposedly energy-efficient light bulb, the Centennial Light Bulb will likely continue to burn many more years. The question we should be asking here is not how this light bulb has lasted 123 years, but rather who is responsible for turning off your bulb. Okay, so let's get to know Ernest Elmo. It's enough to know that he was an American advertiser. Following the Great Depression in 1929, he published an article called Advertising Building of Taste. The part we should be focused on is where Elmo advocated the government's support of planned obsolescence. Since planned obsolescence doesn't seem like a concept that would be easily accepted by society, it was given a more appealing name: consumer engineering. Over the last 13 years, the effect of consumer engineering have been felt heavily, particularly in North America and Europe. In recent years, people have obviously been affected by falling purchasing power and shrinking middle class. People frequently replace barely used items without even considering upgrading or repairing what they already own. This consumption frenzy increases production to meet demand. Over time, factories started treating cars like clothes. If you buy the same product from the same company years later, you can clearly notice the difference in quality. That's because companies, under the pressure of producing more goods, sacrifice quality at the expense of speeding up the development and testing process. At this point, we also need to talk about design. Design is much more than just aesthetic of an object, and it can be a solution to many problems. There are three key factors and any company should take into account manufacturing a product: how it functions, how it looks, and how easily and cheaply it can be produced. A good product usually strikes a pleasant balance between these three elements. However, the balance of process has become increasingly skewed over the last 10 years. Particularly, the manufacturability of products has set the most charge. In the past, any product was handmade and producers would shape their products according to customer feedback and complaints, striving to reach a flawless prototype. But then came the first major shift when the Industrial Revolution introduced machines into design process and drastically increased production scale. Now you could manufacture your desired product with machines much faster, in greater quantities, and with less far effort. If your design was faulty or poor, it could result in one of the most expensive mistakes you could make: thousands of deceived goods on your hands. And this is still the case today. The second wave of change came with the Great Depression. The Great Depression fundamentally altered the nature of consumption. The economy desperately needed a boost, and consumer goods were the most viable way to achieve that. Let's return to Elmo's Elmo. Elmo, a leading figure in the advertising world, put forth a sales strategy in a 1913 article that would go on to define our modern purchasing habits. This strategy, or what he called consumer engineering, relied on advertisers or designers artificially creating demand by making old items undesirable. In a 1933 article by real estate broker Werner Land, he talked about the government leasing the lifespan of products. From this point onward, concepts like planet obstacle and trends and fashion become ingrained in our lives. Fast forward to today, and we can see that the people have been conditioned to regularly buy something new and replace what they have just bought. Companies, in response, increased their production, leading to objects becoming non-functional after a certain period of time. Today's consumer mindset is always focused on finding the next best product on the market, but better doesn't always mean longer lasting. In the past, when you needed a new jacket, you would go to a tailor, get your measurements taken, choose the material, and have it custom made. You wouldn't need to buy a jacket for many years after that. In the last 10 or 20 years, this culture has disappeared. Today, although a significant portion of shopping is done online, what we need to pay attention to isn't how we shop, but how frequently we shop. Thanks to consumer engineering, our old jacket has become outdated with a simple change. Maybe they replaced buttons with zippers, and people bought this new jacket even though there was nothing wrong with the old one they already owned. That's because somewhere in their minds, they were always yearning the best next thing. Even the TikToks and Instagram reels we watch change what we think we need based on the trends. In this sense, we are completely surrounded. A 2021 survey showed that about 14% of customers in Western Europe buy clothes at least once a month. A study in the United Nations revealed that a person in 2014 bought 16 or more clothes than someone in 20, and each item was kept for only half as long. Consumers are buying 5 times as many clothes as they did in the 1970s. This trend focus and bulk buying sales strategy has significantly lowered the quality of both products being sold and the lives of workers producing them. So, we have been talking about clothes for a while now. But what about the technology? When computers and similar products first entered our lives, it made a lot of sense to upgrade device frequently. Thanks to technological leaps, the differences between a device from a year or 2 years ago and the current one made paying this price worthwhile. You might recall the iPhone example I gave at the beginning of the video. However, as the technology advanced and became more complex, a new problem surfaced. None of these new products were released with repair tools. Since it's not very possible for an average person to repair a device containing a chip, we can say that repairs were often reliably made difficult. Apple resisted the right to repair laws for years, arguing that company secrets would be revealed, and this continued until 2021, when years of activism led Apple to start selling the necessary parts for repairs. Although Apple's products still remain among the most difficult for an ordinary person to repair without professional help, Especially if you plan to do more than just replace a battery. Apple is not the only company opposing right to repair laws. Many giants like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Tesla, John Deere, and General Electric have spent billions of dollars opposing repair rights. So, unless companies allow it, it's generally not possible to repair technological devices on your own. Yet, one of the beautiful aspects of repairing a broken product and keeping it in your life is that the product gains a sentimental value. You can think of items passed down through generations, like a watch that belonged to your father or grandfather. Perhaps the vintage culture in clothing also stems from this idea. A cheap but stylish piece you inherited from your parents or bought from a second-hand shop likely feels better than a piece you'd buy from Zara. And let's not to forget about the inflationary environment we are in today, even if we don't want to admit it. Any product you bought 10 years ago will probably have a much different price today, but don't let the price increase fool you thinking there is no inflation. That's because the quality of product you buy today, something you'll replace in about 2 years, has been drastically altered. Remember the graph about functionality, appearance, and manufacturability? Knowing that no producer would want a customer to pay $115 today for something that cost $15 10 years ago. Companies lower their cost to keep the price relatively the same. To increase manufacturability, they have to cut from other two parameters. As you can imagine, appearance remains relatively unchanged due to brand value, marketing, and the product's appeal to customers. But there's a significant loss on the functionality, which is less noticeable in the first look. This explains why a simple coat from brand A today costs around $13. While the coat looks like a coat in terms of functionality, is far from keeping you warm because it's made of polyester to reduce cost. This is largely due to rising material and labor cost over the last decade, exacerbated by the climate crisis, the pandemic, and the rapid rise in inflation. The sad part is that we now have a generation that doesn't know about high quality clothing feels like or looks like. Surely, as long as customer demand persists, companies will be eager to participate in this cycle. But at the point we have reached today, it would be wrong to place the blame solely on consumers. The architect of this new buying better culture in shopping are the companies. If companies had taken more cautious steps back then, we might not have ended up here today, and any profit-driven company will inevitably exploit this consumer weakness. So today, expecting companies to take a step towards change would be quite foolish. Unfortunately, I have to admit that the problem lies with us. Consumers need to learn how to define quality, take care of what they already own, and advocate for the right to repair regulation where they doesn't exist. Try to buy less, and when making a purchase, especially when shopping online, don't rely solely on appearance. Consider the functionality too. Be the guardian of what you own. Remember that objects, like everything else, require maintenance. Sorting through and reordering trash heap we have buried under as customers will take some time. But let's not forget that the system we are is designed for us. Just like in elections, where your vote gives you the strongest influence over political parties, the decisions you make as a customer about what you buy or not buy are the moments when you hold the most power and influence over companies. Of course, all this applies to those who have an interest in the subject and are willing to put in the effort. What you choose to do with everything I've mentioned is up to you. Finally, what I should say is this. In my opinion, the best iPhone isn't the 14, 15 or 16. It's the one I can use for many years and upgrade as needed.
So I just finished the editing of this video and I just realized I didn't mention the other video I just posted. You can, I think I put it right here if you want to click it. I don't know, like here. Thanks.